Hi, you're listening to After Dinner Conversations, short stories for long discussions. What that means is we get short stories, we select those short stories, and then we discuss them specifically about the ethics and the morality of the choices the characters and the situations put us in. Why did you do this? What makes you do this? What makes us good people? What's the nature of truth, goodness, all of that sort of stuff. And hopefully we're all better, smarter people for it and learn a little bit about why we think the way we think. So thank you for listening. Hi, and welcome back once again to After Dinner Conversation, short stories for long discussions. I am your co-host, Kolby, here with Ashley.
Hello.
And Jeremy.
Hi.
Hi. And we have another sponsor for this week, which I guess is a good sign. This week we are sponsored by Transcriptions Fast. They are a transcription company that focuses on doing podcast transcriptions. And so we were working with another company. They were both expensive and not great. And now we're working with Transcriptions Fast as a partnership. And so if you have a podcast or any transcription needs at all, go to transcriptionsfast.com. And as a special offer, if you type in after dinner at checkout, or when you do your thing, you'll get 25% off your first transcription that you request. I assume that within reason or something, like you can't transcribe like the works of Shakespeare or something. But
Thank you, Transcriptions Fast.
yeah, so if you start to see our transcriptions get better, that is why, because they're doing them now, which is super cool of them. Okay, so Jeremy, you have our story for the week, Two
Yes.
Percenters.
By CJ
By CJ
Erick.
Erick.
Yes.
All right. So this is a science fiction story. Back to science fiction. I feel like we've been We've had a few of these that have
I'm
not
super
been.
excited to have science fiction again. I like the science fiction.
So
There are
this story.
two lights. There are two lights.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. I just had to get a Star Trek reference out of the way right away.
All right.
Okay, I'll shut up.
This story takes place in a future where genetic engineering has produced perfect people, but there's a limitation to it where only 2% of the population can be genetically modified, turned into super beings, basically. And so they're identified at birth or shortly after, and then they're given these treatments and become a variety of different types. In this story, there's two different types. I don't remember what they're called specifically, but one type they're beautiful by all standards, and that's one of the characters in the story. And the other character is just I wish I could find this, what they called them.
Rational?
Right, they were rationals.
Yeah. And socials,
so
I think was the other one.
Right, rationals and socials. And, two different types. The rationals are very smart and very analytical. She even has a way of like splitting her mind into two and separating her ego from her rational thought. So she can analyze everything that happened to her and really figure out what's going on, and including like calculating the percentage that, this scenario is a test or, something like that. And so basically the story starts with these two meeting and the social basically telling this rational that there was this famous one of them who developed a method to turn all of the people on Earth to allow them all to be genetically modified. And
so everyone could be like a superhuman.
Everyone could be a superhuman. But there's a catch, and he apparently the super guy who invented this killed himself because of this, because releasing this into the general populace would kill the 2% of people who have already been modified, or disfigure them or maim them or make them into normals.
Yeah,
that would
be the best case scenario is they become normals, but a lot of them become even worse.
Right, it's total flowers for Algernon here. All the people who have been advanced will definitely degrade to normals or worse, but it saves the rest of the population. And part of this conversation they go through is that things are getting bad, that, only 2% of them can be modified, and that has created a huge class division between the supers and the normals. And society is getting worse. Violent crime is up, and even though they've been steering the population for a long time, things are getting worse.
Okay.
And so and they argue about this, so they have an argument about, will this make things better, because all of them will be smart and will be back to the same thing where they'll all just fight over resources now, where we have been shepherding them. And is that better?
Because like
if they're all smart.
Because the 2% have basically been like running the show now, right?
Yes.
And the 98% just defer to them. I think they say that like this is something like, they live as our pets basically, but it's a really nice backyard.
Yes, that is basically, and it's not that they've intentionally made them pets, but that because of their, of their superness, their advanced knowledge, because of the gifts they've been given by genetic modification, they become better stewards for all of humanity.
Yeah. So how does
not
the story
that they've enslaved?
Yeah. So it's just a natural sort of leadership roles. Yeah.
Right. And so they have this conversation, and the social leaves, and the rational, separates her mind and analyzes the whole situation, and comes to with a certainty of 93%, she concluded she had been in fact enrolled in a psychological experiment, and that with a similar certainty that her reaction and response would affect her future opportunities and career track. If it was a test, the vial contained only colored water, and the correct response was to smash it on a crowded walkway to simulate releasing the virus. So she thinks, that she's being tested, and the really the obvious solution here, the utilitarian decision she has to make is save all of humanity.
Right.
At the cost of the 2%.
Doesn't she come to the conclusion that the answer is the same, right? So if it's a test, the way to pass the test is to smash the vase, and release the virus. If it's not a test, then maybe the moral thing to do is to smash the vase and release the virus. So it actually doesn't matter if it's a test or not. She's going to do the same thing.
Right. And they give you your Star Trek reference. The benefit of the many supersede the penalties for the few.
Yeah.
So she's like, I need to go for a walk anyways. And she goes for a walk, and there additional stuff happens. The people avoid her.
Because the specials never come down to street level.
Right. And so she's walking down the street, and all of a sudden there's sirens. There's an accident, and she goes to this accident, and it's the social that left her has jumped in front of a truck, killing herself. And so suddenly she reanalyzes the situation, and comes to the realization that there's an 80% chance that what's in the vial is now real.
Because that's why the social killed herself, because she didn't want to live without being special.
Yes.
Yeah. And so I forget that I kind of remember, but at the end of the story, she ends up releasing the virus, right?
Yes, absolutely.
She sprinkles it on babies' heads and puts it on the escalator railing.
Okay. And so
gets it around.
And so one of the things that I was a little confused about, and I reread it again this morning. So is it basically they created like an aerosol virus version of this treatment? So basically you get the common cold, you cough and sneeze on people, they get the common cold, and it spreads to the entire world, and eventually everyone becomes better.
Right.
Okay, so I did read it correctly. It just seemed like a weird way to spread something.
Exactly. And then they said, it's some sort of, it is a virus, and it'll get around, and and there's a lot more in the story. They talk about how he was able to develop it, and things like that.
But that's the gist of it, yeah. And what were your thoughts, Jeremy, when you read it?
It's a really for a short story, it's really well done, and it gets across everything it wants or that needs to be presented in this story. And I think her utilitarian decision is correct. From that perspective, that to save all of humanity, you have to elevate all of humanity.
All right, I'm going to give you grief for a second.
Okay.
Just because it's fun. So what about this as an argument that we currently have a system where like everyone is, roughly the same ability levels within, like reason. And it doesn't seem to work terribly well. We have people that rise to the top, but not necessarily through great means or methods. They are...
Or because of their intelligence.
Yeah, or because of their intelligence. They're afraid they're going to be taken off of that place because they don't have some inherent advantage outside of the money they have now. And we have a very sort of upheavaled system. If there were clearly better human beings that became the natural leaders of our communities, wouldn't that, one, lead to better answers because you'd have smarter people choosing, and two, end sort of this internal strife among the 98% because they know that they just don't have the goods to be one of those 2%ers.
So what's your question?
So my question is, is it actually right to release this virus and create everyone back to equal? Maybe it's to the benefit of humanity to have a few elite people lead the masses who are too dumb to do it themselves.
Potentially.
I don't necessarily agree with that opinion. I'm just curious to throw it out there.
Right. I think you got to watch Westworld Season 3 first before we can really talk about this.
Okay. We're just getting started in it. No, it is an interesting question. At what, and I suppose it really depends on what is the cost. What is the condition? And that's what the story doesn't really go into, is what is the condition of the normals? Do they all have, universal basic income so that they can pursue what they want to do? Or are they all working menial jobs because the supers have enslaved them? This really isn't discussed. Yeah. They say they're shepherding humanity, but what does that really mean? Right.
Clearly, they're in positions of advantage.
Of course,
they have money, they have status. Right.
Yeah.
So that was my issue with this story. They want to say we are so much more superior, but we still have problems. It's like, if you thought you were so superior and you thought you were so great, then why do you still have all these issues? And so making more people smart like you is going to make it better? Like fix the problems first. That was my first thing.
Wait a minute, so are you arguing fix the problems and keeping the status quo, or fix the problems by making everyone smart?
No, fix their problems. They're like, oh, there's still hatred and there's still problems with all these...
But which is the better way to fix it? By making everyone equal, or by letting the elites lead?
Okay, so just because... No, don't make everyone elite. Because obviously your elitism isn't going to solve all the problems. You already have 2% that can't figure out the problem.
Sure.
So for me, it's like... All right, hold on, guys. If we say we're the end-all, be-all, we better really figure out if we really are before we make everyone like us. Because obviously we have faults. So that was my first thing. It's like they put themselves on this huge hierarchy, yet they're just as...
So you're not even...
They're still not as competent as...
So you're not even sure superhumans have a better chance of solving problems than regular humans?
Yeah, that was my first point. My second point was...
Right.
There was no consent given to the normal people if they even wanted to become 2%. There was no option given to them. It was like, you're just going to be...
So there is.
No, and the fact that she threw the vial everywhere.
It's like sneaking acid in the punch at the party.
But again, from the story, this doesn't make them super. It makes them
genetically
amenable to the therapy.
Yeah, that's true.
So... It was that only 2% of the people the therapy works on.
That's right. There's like genetic modification that can only work on certain people.
Right, and this is an infection that makes them all modifiable. So they could still have the option.
Doing it.
Oh, okay.
At least that's how I read it. That this fixes the problem.
I read it that way too, Jeremy, but I totally understand where Ashley's coming from. Because they pitch it like, well, if we do this, everyone will want it.
Yeah.
Like they assume everyone
Right.
will go through the modifications, and so
Yeah.
it seems like a done deal.
Yeah.
But
I would kind of agree.
but
It probably is a done deal.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that, like
But you could still turn it down.
you could, but like, do you want to be the only dumb person in a room of like 90 other people who have had this surgery? Have this?
I would just sit there and I'd be like, all right, so you want to make me like you, and all I'm doing is sitting here looking at all the problems that you've created for us. Like, you say you're all great, we still have problems, so you're not as great as you think you are. Like, that was my first initial take. I was kind of put off on how they talked about the normal people.
The
That
sort of egotism.
really bothered me. And so I'm like, do we really need, I don't know if that's a side effect of being a 2%. I don't know if that's what happens when you become 2%, that sort of like happens to your brain, that you kind of like think that way. But I was like, so having more people like that, I don't know if that's such a good thing.
So Jeremy, tell us, do you look down on other people?
I try not to,
as
but man,
as a
it's hard.
2%er, do you look down on other people?
I don't know.
And you're like, everyone would be like me if they could.
No,
No.
not like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, it's just normal. Read the news, like, oh my God, why are people so stupid?
Okay, so it's the usual frustrations.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll say for me, I hadn't thought about the thing that you mentioned, Ashley, that like, why would anyone want this at all? But that actually, now that you say that makes a lot of sense to me. Like maybe the solution isn't making everyone smarter. Maybe it's just not allowing anyone to do the genetic modifications at all, right? Don't let the people who have the ability, don't let those 2% people go through the process. But that seems like a cat that's out of the bag. Like if it would be like, even if you banned it, there'd be some shady dude in North Korea doing it like on the side in back alleys or whatever. Like, why wouldn't you get that advantage just for jobs or for sports or for whatever your area is? So I guess once it's one of those things that kind of can't be uninvented, is maybe the problem with it. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I read this one twice, and I don't know if I would release the vial or not. Only because, and this goes back to my own bias here, I actually kind of think the world should be run by the 2% that are smarter than everybody else. That the vast majority of people don't, and this comes back to our glittering glade conversation from ever ago. I kind of think the vast majority of people just put the front right wheel on like Chevrolets their whole life. And that they're not, that it's not that they're not contributing to sort of the manufacturing or the process of life, and that they're not happy and good people, but they're not going to get us to the moon.
It's right. They're not motivated to do amazing things. They're just motivated to
they don't have the
do normal things.
Right, and I think there are people who have one or both. Like, they might have the ability but not the motivation, and they might have the motivation and not the ability.
Right.
But I think there are a few people who both have the ability and the motivation. Yeah, and you just sort of they often rise to the top, and
so let them naturally rise to the top. And then,
but it's much fewer than 2%.
That's true.
Where if there were 2%, that might be a great benefit to society.
That's
where
true.
It's a larger pool to draw from.
So one of the things I heard Neil deGrasse Tyson say once, when they asked him, he said that most scientists say that, they stand on the shoulder. They've seen farther. It's because they stand on the shoulder of giants. And I saw in an interview once, somebody said, "Oh, you mean like Isaac Newton?" And I always thought his response was perfect. His response was, Isaac Newton didn't stand on the shoulders of giants. Isaac Newton was a giant. Literally needed calculus, so he invented it. Right?
During a quarantine,
During
right?
a quarantine, yes. He's like, I need to solve the area under an arc. I think I'll invent a brand new branch of math that he had invented once before and didn't think it was all that interesting, so he got rid of it. And he needed it a second time, so he reinvented it again and published it. And so I feel like there are your special people. But I hear what you guys are saying in that maybe we don't need 2% of them. Maybe we only need 0.0001% of them. Or,
No, I'm saying we would benefit from having a larger number of those people. But maybe not everybody.
Yeah.
Because again, the motivation and the ability.
So my thing is, I'm okay if you want to become a 2%er, but you have to show that motivation and that you have that something special.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I'm saying don't get, just because you have the genetic whatever doesn't mean you should become a 2%er.
Well, and here's
Like
the other
what
one.
What are you going to use
What are you
that
going to use it for,
for?
right? And so here's the second part of it that I think is worth talking about that's not in the story is you've now created genetically improved people at a variety of things. It could be sports, it could be attractiveness, it could be whatever. But there's no sort of moral test before you get that process. So we're assuming that all of these amazing people are acting in our best interests. They're not. They're just amazing people. So you might be creating supervillains as well as superheroes.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's the
But
thing
you're
getting
also,
at.
but
Yeah.
you're assuming that morality is innate.
That's true. That it's not taught. That's a good
Where
point.
that part of this process should also be, ethics.
Yeah. This is why you don't start the Jedi training when you're like 19, Luke.
So that's
You got to
kind
do
of
it you got to start at like 6 months old when you're still being developed as a person.
that's the thing that concerns me the most is you're elevating this one set of person to such a high like free pass
Right. They
that
could just enslave everybody.
I don't think anyone should just be thrown to the high level.
Yeah.
I
So
think
keep
it should be
keep
earned.
everyone lower, or keep everyone normal, so that there's not the risk of like creating the next supervillain.
Unless you like earn it yourself. Like you
Yeah.
have to build it up. And that's going to take relying on other people, not just some mental whatever that just sets you up.
Not just right.
So the sleight of hand makes it more apt to be a corrupt process as opposed to earning it. The fact that it's
Yes.
a trick that gets you there makes you
Yeah.
more likely to be corrupt.
Yeah.
Jeremy, what do you think of that argument?
No, I think that's certainly a valid argument because,
Yeah.
any system can become corrupted. And it's not ever a simple, this system was designed to be corrupt. It was, we designed it to be perfect.
But
And then, in the next generation, somebody made a change to make it easier for them to corrupt the process.
Yeah.
So I'm going
right?
to switch this to kind of an example. We talk about, 2%. I think this is kind of what the story was getting
Yeah.
at. Those that have money and those that don't. Like a kid that inherits bajillions of dollars, they're just going to float on that. I'm just making an assumption. Should they just be able to straight up inherit that? Or do they have to make a name for themselves and
Yeah.
work for it and be motivated by it?
So this came up actually. So Elon Musk, who has a fair bit of money, has a kid. Hi, this is Kolby, and you are listening to After Dinner Conversation, short stories for long discussions. But you already knew that, didn't you? If you'd like to support what we do at After Dinner Conversation, head on over to our Patreon page at patreon.com/After Dinner Conversation. That's right, for as little as $5 a month, you can support thoughtful conversations like the one you're listening to. And as an added incentive for being a Patreon supporter, you'll get early access to new short stories and ad-free podcasts, meaning you'll never have to listen to this blurb again. At higher levels of support, you'll be able to vote on which short stories become podcast discussions, and you'll even be able to submit questions for us to discuss during these podcasts. Thank you for listening, and thank you for being the kind of person that supports thoughtful discussion. Who has a fair bit of money, has a kid. I think he has one kid. It lives in California, and he decided the public school system was stupid, that it didn't create great humans, right? It didn't do the things he wanted to do. So he, with his money, created his own charter school just for his child and like 5 to 7 other like uber rich kids.
Mm-hmm.
And they are getting like the equivalent of, like Aristotle coming to your house every day to tutor you. And so they go to school, and there is a legitimate school for like the elite of the elite of the elite that are getting an education, a quality of education that we could never have a chance at. And so the money is the thing that's generating the 2%. in this example.
I think it's the mind should elevate you, not the money.
Yeah.
Like your abilities and your creativeness and your way to think outside the box or your athletic giftedness should elevate you, not money.
But that's not the way it is today.
No,
right?
it's not.
Yeah.
That's just how I feel.
Yeah. Jeremy, you got any thoughts on this? It sounds
I think Elon Musk has 3 kids. He just had a new one with the new wife, but I think he's got 2 kids from a previous relationship.
And they're all in that special school where it's like Aristotle comes and tutors you every day.
Wasn't there like controversy over what he named his kid? It's some weird with
yeah,
messed up letters and a number in it.
Yeah. I actually think that's kind of cool, only because like it's branding. Everyone's going to know that kid when they see the job application.
Absolutely.
Like whose resume is this? Oh, I know who this is.
So I want to go to question 2. Does
right.
the human race have a collective obligation to continue to improve our species? Does the human race have any collective obligation at all? So this one I debated back and forth from.
Okay.
I think we should just let nature play its role. What made me step back from that is if there was an imminent like, oh my gosh, asteroid's coming to Earth and we need to destroy it like now, like right now. We need to figure that out, like solve that problem.
But isn't that nature taking its course?
Exactly. So then I defaulted back to just let kind of nature take its course.
So if you're letting nature take its course and we have the ability to divert the asteroid,
why
that's
would you
okay,
not?
right?
Us learning that ability is part of nature. That's the argument I would make.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you can see far enough ahead and know that as a society we're ruining the planet and there are ways to prevent that, why shouldn't we?
Yeah. I feel like it's like slamming on the gas and accelerating it artificially, because a lot of these genetically predisposed to be enlightened people, they are getting it kind of artificially. I don't know. It's like let them come to it on their own terms. You really want them to earn it. Yeah.
I think this stems back to the fact that you really are still mad at Lance Armstrong.
I'm not mad at him at all.
Well, because but obviously there's a lot of performance enhancing drugs that have gone on in sports.
I'm not mad at
that
him.
Doesn't do you see the similarity? maybe not Lance Armstrong, but the similarity between like this is a kind of using technology for enhancement cheating. And now we're doing it like it's like super Ritalin or something.
I don't think they should have, but I'm not mad at him.
But you're also saying that these people shouldn't. You see what I'm saying? There's a similarity there between.
No, you don't understand my
thing. Cheating at sports versus cheating at life.
I don't think anyone should cheat at anything.
That's what she's saying. She's still mad at Lance Armstrong. Not that you're mad at him, but you disapprove of his choices.
Correct.
Yeah. So what do you think,
But
Jeremy?
I understand the situation that was around and everyone was doing it, but that's a whole nother ballgame.
What do you think, Jeremy? Does the human race have a collective obligation to continue to improve as a species?
I believe we do.
So
I think we have a collective obligation to improve, to make sure that the species continues.
This is my concern. You're putting that trust in those people who can't even take care of 98% of the population right now. That's what makes me go, pump the brakes. That's the only thing. If once they've solved the issues here, then maybe like open it up. But
I think we have to keep improving to solve the issues here. Not that we have to, keep improving in a genetic modification sense, but that we have to keep improving from a society sense to, care for the people who are here now and plan for the future.
And so by doing that is getting more people into it. I mean, I would be like, 2%ers, before you go manipulating any more people, you better figure this out before you get anyone else more involved.
So here's the problem that I have with it. Although I think one of the things that's not brought up in the story, one of the main issue that I have with eugenics, I mean, there are several problems with eugenics, but one of the main ones is somebody has decided what the goal is, whether it's blonde hair or blue eyes or being tall or being short or being smart or being athletic or being beautiful, whatever beautiful is at that moment in time. And so do I think we have an obligation to better ourselves and better our species? Yes. Here's the problem. I don't know what better means.
Yeah.
necessarily means, right?
Right. So you could take the sort of traditional like virus view, and that the goal of humanity as a species is to continue to exist, continue to populate, and continue to expand, like just like a virus, right?
Yes.
From here to the moon to Mars to other solar systems to everything. Or you could take the view that to improve as a species means to sort of have a higher quality of life, even if that means withholding new technologies and new ideas and new things because they don't make us happier, right? Like the Amish view of life, right? Like if the point of life is to be happy, you know, as Amish, we're pretty happy. We don't need zippers. And I think that's the part of this that the story presumes is that the idea of moving forward means something very specific in this story. And that if you give everyone that it'll go better, or there'll be less strife. And that's the part of our... I'm rambling because I don't have this all sorted out in my head.
It's like a false sense
Right.
of
Yeah,
security,
it's
a false sense
yes.
of hope.
Right. So when you say, do we have an obligation to move the species forward? I would say yes, but what does move the species forward mean?
Yes.
Right.
And that's what
And
concerns me. I don't know their motives.
Yeah.
And you already know there's a separation between the normal people and the 2%ers. They don't interact with one another. They don't really...
Well, no, they don't have anything to talk about.
Well, I mean, there's just not even like... You now have these 2%ers ruling over the other people, and they don't even know anything about them. It doesn't seem like they're really even interested in them. I think that's should be super alarming.
Yeah. Jeremy, I'm sorry. We've interrupted you like twice between Ashley and I. What were you saying?
Oh, no, that's fine. Basically, and what I mean by we have an obligation to make ourselves better is, you know, not even talking about genetic modification. We're talking about we have an obligation to be better people in our own society.
Okay.
You know, and
like
that
for
is what we should be.
self-improvement.
For self-improvement, but for the benefit of society. That
Wow, you're
we
sounding
should
more and
all...
more like me, man. I don't know how I feel about that. Don't be such a Kolby.
But
My concern is...
So you're saying if I've got free time, I should be reading like the complete works of somebody,
yeah, certainly.
not Anne Frank.
I'm gonna kind of switch this because it
Anne
kinda-
Ryan, sorry.
It
Anne
keeps
Ryan.
coming back to it. We talk about, say, the 2% were the people with money. Yeah, what would they have to talk about with normal people like us? Well, one of your questions was, should question number 4. Wait, no, not question number 4. Question number 3. Should those that have the enhancements make policy decisions for the world? That'd be like saying the 2% should rule over what we do with the money or what policy or things like that. Yeah. And it's like, you don't even
they
know.
already do.
You don't
They already
even.
do.
We don't even know what the 98% want or need or what their struggles are, because you can't even relate to what a poor person's struggle is, because poor to you means, oh, I couldn't get caviar on Tuesday. You know, oh, it's terrible. Like, it's like, you know. Like Elon Musk is like, education's terrible. Solve it. How do you do that? Make my own school. Like, no, that's not the way you solve it. You elevate the whole school system to...
And really, that is the right decision. Elevate the whole system, because it isn't just about what your kids are, how your kids are benefiting. You need all of society to benefit.
Yeah.
To have factory workers next year or in the future. We all need...
Or even to have children that your kids can relate to. How about that? If your kid's like super way off far right, how are they going to actually be normal kids? So that brings me to the fact that, yes, you want to release this genetic material that, again, it's only susceptible to some of the population should they decide to take it. You're just creating more of a division. It's like you're getting rid of the middle class. You now have the haves versus the have-nots. Yeah, there's no more of that middle class.
I think I just had a very, and I think I have a very different view on humanity in this sense, in that and this goes back to our Rainbow People of the Glittering Glade conversation. I think I think smart people aren't necessarily more moral, but if we can figure out what it is we want them to do, I think they're better at getting us to do it. Like, I mean, I'm not saying the system we have right now is a meritocracy. I don't think the best and brightest rise to the top. But if we could guarantee that the best and brightest rose to the top, I think they would rule us better than we rule ourselves.
I'm going to bring it back to a previous story. Just because, what was it that you said? You said,
I say a
come
lot
back,
of stupid
come back
stuff.
to me in just a second.
Jeremy.
Just because it's what you can offer doesn't mean that's what we need right now.
Yeah, that's
like
true.
about the perfect movie.
Oh yeah, we were talking
Just
about the
because-
movie Bright. Remember we were talking about that on Netflix?
Yes.
The
Just-
buddy cop thing.
Just because that's the
Right.
perfect
Copy
way
A
to
movie.
solve it, is that what we need?
Yeah. I'm sorry, Jeremy. I feel like Ashley and I have had like a whole debate about this, and we cut you off on this one. And you're the one who read it and is briefing us on it and doing all this stuff.
You didn't read it?
No, I read it. I mean, I
No, I know what you mean. I'm sorry.
Were there things about it that really stood out to you? I feel like Ashley and I are having our own separate conversation, in part just because it's a little bit tougher with the Skyping, whatever virtual thing.
No,
but
that's fine. No, I think we're all making really good points on this. It really does come down to what are their motivations. Is being smarter enough? If it's the smartest people ruling effectively, is that enough just to be smart, or do you also have to be grounded in ethics and morality?
do you think you even can be? I think one of Ashley's points is that once you have elevated yourself beyond the common person, it's impossible to have the morality of their interest, of their best interest for them in the same way they could have for them.
They just don't
Right.
understand.
Like, is it impossible for like the Queen of England to ever really be empathetic to a situation that she doesn't understand or doesn't live?
That's a good question. I think so, because we're all effectively human. We all are human, and we all have the same kind of experiences. Even though Elon Musk kids are at a better school, they still don't like their teachers.
Sure.
More than likely,
So you think?
but I'm saying,
that,
how does
that we all have common experiences, and you'll always be able to relate to somebody, even if they always had servants their whole life. You'll still be able to relate to them.
But more
on something.
more importantly, you think they'll be able to relate to you?
Yes,
Okay.
if they try.
If they try, I think Ashley has a
You know.
different opinion that somebody who's never like sort of walked the mean streets, they may logically know what that's like.
you can read about it in a book,
Right.
don't mean you understand it.
But it won't. But you don't feel it the way a person who's had to sleep in their car does.
That's certainly true. But
Yeah.
it doesn't mean they can't understand.
And still
they-
can't fix it according to you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Question number 5. Is it ever ethical to take away from one person to raise up another? That was one of the ones that I did wonder about this. Is you're basically taking, and you mentioned this, Jeremy, the sort of needs of the many outweighing the needs of the few.
And that's something.
Even
If we talk,
right, even
Okay, go ahead.
presuming that you should do this, is it ethical to do this because you're taking away from other people?
right, and you talked about consent. Who really does not have consent in this situation is the 2%.
Who've already had the treatment.
Yes.
Yeah.
They are all going to suffer because of this decision, and they don't know that it's for the benefit of everyone, and they did not make that decision. So, they're really having that decision taken from them. They have no agency in this.
They're the only ones who have no agency in this. That's a good point.
Yeah.
So Jeremy, and then I'm curious to get to Ashley as well. Do you,
But at the
situation-
same time, that doesn't mean that they're going to die. It doesn't mean any of that. It just means that they're on par with everybody else.
par or less.
And
Or less.
That's why
they
that
go
girl-
back to being normal.
But again,
I
they
think that's why
didn't-
that
they
girl
didn't-
killed
they
herself
didn't-
because she didn't want to be par or less.
did she earn her genetic awesomeness?
She won the lottery.
She won the lottery. So I'm sorry, honey, that more babies were born after you that were also beautiful and you don't feel beautiful anymore because you're walking around with other beautiful people.
But I mean, it bothered her enough that she killed herself.
Because she apparently has a superiority complex. Not because...
But I'm not sure it's a complex.
But no, she was going to regress. Yeah. And they were going to regress. The 2% are all going to regress.
Her beauty was only regressing because society...
Because they were going to release the virus.
Yeah, but that's...
And it's not just that everyone was being elevated. All of the existing 2% are going to regress to be normals or worse. So what they have is being taken away from them without consent.
But they are still the same them. They don't regress. Everyone around them just elevated. Am I understanding this correctly?
No, it says...
They become less than average.
Yes. All the 2% who have been elevated will regress to where they started or worse. They'll become disfigured. They'll be maimed. They'll potentially die.
They'll be considered They'll be considered like...
So somebody who's got 130 IQ will not drop to 100. They will drop to 100 or less.
Right. It's all flowers for Algernon. They've all been elevated, and now it's going to go back to where they were or worse.
Yeah. So Jeremy, do you release the virus for that reason? Does that keep you from releasing it?
I don't know. In the scenario of what we're presented in the story, I would do the same thing.
You'd release it?
I would release it.
All right. At least we pinned you down on an answer. That's a change.
Even if you're a 2%er, say you were a 2%er, would you release it? Yeah.
Ashley, you're a no, right? You wouldn't release it?
I wouldn't trust the system enough as it is. I mean, this is one doctor who came up with this formula and then killed himself. And then your best friend just killed
testing.
Yeah.
And then your best friend just killed themselves. I'd be like, what exactly is this? And what, like, I would...
All right, so if I'm paraphrasing correctly, Jeremy releases it because he thinks everyone should be smarter. You don't release it because you don't trust that the thing even works or works the way it should or is even, like, real. And I don't release it because I think 2% of the population should rule over the masses. So we actually... Normally our votes are always like 2-1, but this is actually a 1-1-1 vote. Even though there's only two choices.
I made it my own.
There's only two choices, but we got three answers. All right. That's cool. I kind of like that. All right. Ashley, anything else you wanted to talk about? Otherwise, we'll wrap it up.
No, I'm good.
Jeremy, anything else you want to chat?
That's a tough one.
I think we're good.
All right. I would just like to point out that I looked high and low for the photo that I used on the front of this cover of this jacket to find like a glowing blue liquid. And I just want to point out I'm very proud of like the 2 hours I spent looking for the perfect photo. So if you do read the ebook, check that out as well. Okay.
I'm glad you didn't use a red pill.
No. It's like this phosphorescent looking liquid vial with a needle going in it. It looks really cool. At any rate, you're listening to After Dinner Conversations, short stories for long discussions. Please like and subscribe. Please support us on Patreon.
Check out our website.
Go to our website. Our website has every link you could need to podcasts, to YouTube videos, to Facebook. It has everything. So if you just go to the website, you can branch out from there in a million ways. Also, thank you for our sponsor this week, Transcriptions Fast, for doing our transcription work. And if you use the discount code After Dinner, you will get, I forgot what they said, 25% off your first transcript. And they specialize in podcasts, but they'll do anything that you send them an audio file of. And that is it. Thank you for joining us. Have a great time. Oh, and buy season 2. Bye.
Bye.
If you've enjoyed listening to this, please like and subscribe. It helps us out a ton. You know, the vast majority of people haven't liked and subscribed, which means maybe it shows up in your algorithm, maybe it doesn't. So don't leave that to chance. Just go ahead and hit that button, and we'd sure appreciate that. And that way we can keep doing what we're doing, and you're not left to the whims of some algorithm. Thanks.